sweatshirts, or hoodies, became popular in the 1930s when the company Champion began manufacturing them for factory workers. However, over the decades, hoodies have been adapted in a variety of ways, appearing in runway shows, as well as evolving into a fashion staple among youth. They somberly gained new significance in 2012 after 17-year-old Floridian Trayvon Martin was gunned down by neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman on February 26th. Zimmerman, a Sanford, Florida watchman, thought that Martin was suspicious due to the, quote, dark hoodie, end quote, that he was wearing. Following Martin's death, there was a surge in hoodie marches where participants wore hooded sweatshirts as well as waves of rally activists and senators donning hoodies as a form of protest. They called for action to be taken against Zimmerman, who initially went uncharged and was eventually acquitted of second-degree murder charges after the case went to trial. The furor surrounding Martin's death and the stigma attached to hoodies requires exploring racial beliefs and misconceptions engendering negative sentiments about Black youth. MC Chozan delves into the complexities of this debate about racial perceptions and the Trayvon Martin case in his music video for the song Hoodie On. It was released in August 2013 and dedicated not only to Martin, but to, quote, all the soldiers lost in the struggle, referring to individuals slain both in the United States and abroad. Quote, Trayvon Martin, Sanford, Florida, USA. Oscar Grant, Oakland, California, USA. Sean Bell, New York, USA. Smiley Culture, London, UK. End quote. At the end of this epitaph, Chozan shares a scripture from 2 Samuel 22:29. Quote, for thou art my lamp, O Lord, and the Lord will lighten my darkness, end quote. Darkness serves as a metaphor here for cases of aggressive policing, brutality, and racial profiling experienced by Black youth. However, it also represents a transformative darkness promoting awareness about the effects of such violence and fatalities. Consequently, the video for Hoodie On is a visual confirmation of author and journalist Todd Brewster's finding that the growing number of, quote, victims of both state and vigilante violence form a list that recites, especially in the Black communities that lost them, like a rosary, end quote. Therefore, like rosary beads used during fervent prayers, the name Trayvon Martin is invoked in Hoodie On to address transformative darkness and how it can change public perceptions about Black youth. Martin becomes part of Chozan's necrology of Black lives cut short as a result of violence. On the evening of February 26th, Zimmerman encountered 17-year-old Martin walking through the gated community in which his father, Tracy Martin, lived in. Clad in a hoodie and sneakers, Martin was on his way to a convenience store to purchase an Arizona iced tea and a pack of Skittles. These scenes are recreated in Chozan's music video with a young teenager wearing a Black hoodie designed by his company, Paint Soul. The front of the sweatshirt is adorned with signature Paint Soul designs and emblazoned with the scripture Psalm 27. This sets another context for the video when the words are considered. Quote, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident, end quote. This paper explores how transformative darkness, by analyzing the song and the music video for Hoodie On, as well as the lyrics appearing in the track. Additionally, I will include excerpts from interviews with Chozan about the symbolism featured in the video. By these means, I will discuss the intersection of hip-hop, race, and Christianity in the formation of transformative darkness. The Circle Writing Collective investigates how ideas surrounding Black bodies, religion, and violence are shaped by social structure. In an examination of how Christianity influences hip-hop music and culture, the collective points out that there is a contrast between the valuing and devaluing of Black bodies. They state, quote, "The social system completely forms, language, socioeconomic and political structures and substructures, helps in this process of valuing or devaluing bodies by determining patterns for the presentation and function of our physical bodies. This is often represented in religious experience as opposition and struggle. In other words, the social system tries to determine the ways in which the physical body is viewed and utilized within society," end quote. The concepts of opposition and struggle are captured in Transformative Darkness and demonstrated through the hyper-enforcement of Black youth like Trayvon Martin. The lack of value placed on their lives leads to widespread killing by vigilantes such as Zimmerman. Although Zimmerman believed that he was protecting his community, he was actually perpetuating a cycle of profiling and an overall devaluation of life. The Circle Writing Collective posits that the death of Trayvon Martin and the court trial resulting in a not guilty verdict for Zimmerman in June 2013, quote, "provided a graphic example of this continuing dilemma, indicating that race is still a relevant social concern, one that can result in death," end quote. The remainder of this paper investigates Chozan's music video and song for Hoodie On, examines visual representations, evaluates lyrical content, and indicates how they contribute to a discussion of race and transformative darkness. I propose that transformative darkness is emblematic of good and evil, light and darkness, and sacred and secular. Transformative darkness is represented in the video for Hoodie On in a number of different ways. The candles that are incorporated at various points in the video, halos of light surrounding images of angels hanging on church walls, changing daytime lighting occurring when the teen is approached by a neighborhood patrolman, and the end of the video when Chozan exits a church and an open doorway floods with light. There is also a contrast of black and white and colored video shots, something Chozan declares was done to, quote, "represent the mourning aspect of the song," end quote. The light and darkness is seen visually through this differentiation between the two. Chozan explains that the existence of light and darkness is one of the central themes of the video for Hoodie On. He distinguishes between sacred and secular spaces and representation, stating, "The opening scripture had the statement, 'For thou art my lamp.' So yes, candles were a big theme in this video. The fight between light and dark and good and evil. Also, the candles represented God's protection. The church scene was set up like I was praying for forgiveness throughout. The line in the chorus was, quote, 'Father, forgive me, because I got my hoodie on,' emphasizing the fact that it seems as if it was a crime in the world to wear this garment. This is a return to the ideas expressed earlier in this presentation that hoodies are attached to racialized stereotypes demonizing Black youth. Moreover, Chozan associates himself with these misconceptions about hoodies, opening his song by asking, quote, 'What if it was me up in Florida? With a pink sole hoodie, would you follow, huh?' He recognizes that if he was wearing a hoodie like the one designed by his fashion line Paint Sole, featured in the video, he could also be a target for violence similar to that which took Trayvon Martin's life. Chozan separates the view of a hoodie in the world, the community in which we see a Black teen scrambling through white picket fence passageways, and the church where Chozan sits in a bowed position of prayer with his eyes periodically closed as he raps. The use of these two venues was a deliberate effort to show the co-location of safe and dangerous spaces for Black youth in the video. During conversations and personal communication with Chozan held over the course of 2016 and early 2017, he told me that there were a number of elements of the video that were intentional, and others that were meant to be subliminal and were part of interpretations of, quote, what you can put in it, end quote, as a viewer. In a January 2017 email message, Chozan told me that the video was filmed in a housing complex located in the Bronx, New York, that he believed appeared similar to the community where Martin was killed in Stanford. Chozan wrote that he selected this setting because it didn't look like it was in New York, so it could have been Florida or anywhere outside of NY, end quote. Subsequent scenes in the video were filmed at a public park. Chozan believed that this locale offered freedom. He did not, quote, want the images to be shot in what seemed to be enclosed spaces. The park shot was in the park off Webster Avenue in another part of the Bronx, end quote. He, quote, worked a summer school program that year, so was really familiar with the area. Most of the people in the video were from that area too, end quote. Therefore, Chozan identified places that were important to his daily life, but also integrated members of the larger Bronx community where he was working and residing. Chozan declares that within the video, there are specific aspects that were, quote, done on purpose, end quote. Scriptures, filming in a church, slow motion, the guy's face not being shown as much. The quote-unquote guy that Chozan refers to is the person cast as George Zimmerman in the video. Chozan wanted him to appear faceless. He communicated the role of the man further during a subsequent email. When I asked Chozan why he decided to make the man pursuing the teen in the video faceless, he shared that, quote, he wanted to get across the fact that this man could have been anyone, end quote. He reinforces this idea stating, and in history, they have been anyone. I wanted to take it away from trying to get a Zimmerman look-alike because killings of black males are bigger than just him. It has been a long history and going even deeper, going back to as far as the slave masters hunting the slaves. These sentiments are reiterated by Columbia University professor Robert Gooding Williams. In a 2012 opinion piece featured in the New York Times, Gooding Williams drew parallels between the Fugitive Slave Law of 1793 and the Stand Your Ground Act that Zimmerman exercised while tracking Martin through the housing complex. Based on the Fugitive Slave Law, blacks could be arrested based on the word of whites. Gooding Williams affirms that the same mentality occurred with Trayvon Martin, writing, if it seems a stretch, finally, to paint Zimmerman in the image of the slave catchers of yesteryear, recall that he himself invited the comparison when, while stalking the African-American teenager against the advice of a 911 dispatcher, he complained using an expletive to refer to Trayvon that they, quote, always get away, end quote. Gooding Williams places the death of Trayvon Martin within a historical continuum to demonstrate the violence perpetuated against black youth. While he readily acknowledges that this analogy has received criticism, Gooding Williams points out that there are definite parallels between the voice of Zimmerman declaring the urgency of trailing behind Martin and the voices of white men seeking to capture free blacks and runaway slaves centuries earlier. He cites the case of Adam Crosswhite and his family that escaped from Kentucky in 1843. They resettled in Michigan and had the family from which they fled seek to reclaim them. Although they fled again, this time relocating to Canada, the word of their former owners would have been enough for them to be returned to enslavement. Gooding Williams notes that according to the Fugitive Slave Law, slave owners were, quote, simply to be taken at their word, end quote, in order for blacks to be recaptured. Likewise, Zimmerman was not immediately charged in the death of Martin because, as former Sanford Police Chief Bill Lee said, there were, quote, no grounds to disprove the story of events, end quote. The words of Zimmerman form a large part of Chozan's Hoodie On video. In addition to lyrics, Chozan includes excerpts from the 911 call that Zimmerman made as he stalked Martin in the gated community. There are also seminal excerpts from the call that Chozan features in the song, including the phrases, quote, I'm right by his rear, end quote, and quote, I hate these people, they always seem to get away, end quote. In the video, viewers see scenes of the faceless man watching the black teen from the window of his home, leaving his home to drive behind him in a car, exiting the vehicle to pursue the teen on foot, tussling with the teen in an open, grassy patch, and then finally shooting him in the chest. Another segment of the video is the inclusion of a crowd of people dressed in hoodies, standing behind Chozan as he raps at an outdoor park. There's a mixture of male and female crowd participants. Some of them are wearing paint sole hoodies like Chozan, while others are dressed in other brands. The crowd appears in alternating black and white and color scenes. When I asked Chozan about why he chose to use this crowd, he asserted that they embody the, quote, fact that we are all Trayvon. We are targets. We are all potential victims of injustice. So yes, they were part of the big picture, end quote. Furthermore, wearing a hoodie becomes something requiring a divine plea, as presented by Chozan in the chorus of Hoodie On when he rhymes, as mentioned earlier. Father, forgive me, because I got my hoodie on. I got my hoodie on. God got my hoodie on. This is an extension of Chozan's idea that hoodies became affiliated with criminalization and assumptions about black youth being perceived as suspicious. I was going to play the video at this point, but I'm going to go through. I'll wait a little bit longer and have my concluding statements. In February 2015, the Federal Bureau of Investigations closed the Trayvon Martin case. They issued a press release including comments from former Attorney General Eric Holder stating, quote, the death of Trayvon Martin was a devastating tragedy. It shook an entire community, drew the attention of millions across the nation, and sparked a painful but necessary dialogue throughout the country. Though a comprehensive investigation found that the high standard for a federal hate crime prosecution cannot be met under the circumstances here, this young man's premature death necessitates that we continue the dialogue and be unafraid of confronting the issues and tensions his passing brought to the surface. We, as a nation, must take concrete steps to ensure that such incidents do not occur in the future, end quote. Despite Holder's comments, similar cases involving black youth and women and men and adults have become far more frequent across the nation since Martin's death in 2012. Chozan promotes awareness about Trayvon Martin in his video for Hoodie On and its enactment of events leading up to his death. Chozan acknowledges that Martin's death is a larger form of injustice that could have happened to any black youth. As Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, has written in her current book, Rest in Peace, quote, his presence lives whenever a child walks in darkness, danger, and fear, end quote. The video for Hoodie On shows this and is a sonic and visual example of transformative darkness, the pole existing between good and evil, light and dark, safety and danger, and sacred and secular. Chozan dedicates the video to the, quote, fallen who are dead and gone, end quote. However, he also pushes viewers to contemplate the impact of Martin's death when he says, quote, way beneath the hoodie lies a boy's soul, another life story that won't be told, end quote. Hoodie On is the way that Chozan eulogizes Martin and ensures that the teen's story, a tale shrouded by a dark hoodie, is never forgotten. Thank you. We're going to do a quick switch.
111 and Trayvon. This guy looks like he's younger or on drugs or something.
This is all for the Lord getting gone. God had a trouble that was so long. Cause I got my holy on. This is all for the Lord getting gone. God had a trouble that was so long. Cause I got my holy on. What if it was me up in Florida? With a pink soul hoodie, would you follow? Just cause I was walking at a fast pace. Only because I was in a strange place. So I cut through the rough, right through the middle. When you guys see each other on skills, I try to catch the game, it was that simple. And now I'm laid up in the hospital. Lots of punishing, chest out middle. It's crazy how the whole system is fucked. This is Nick with a bunch. You died and the whole neck with a bunch. And you can hear the screams. Now I'm stuck. Body ain't here down on the ground. This is normal. You must stand your ground. This is for the Lord getting gone. God had a trouble that was so long. Cause I got my money on. This is for the Lord getting gone. God had a trouble that was so long. Cause I got my money on.
Unfortunately, I have to stop. I wanted to cut it at 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and I think that was just purely coincidental to stop at the correct place. We have about 5 minutes for questions.
But I had a question about your thoughts regarding the reproduction of violence against Black people in art and media, and I guess like its role in challenging, or I guess like bringing to light people's misconceptions and so on about that experience, because not in my personal experience, but with other people that I spoke with, seeing those videos of the cop cams and so on, and people's other people's recordings, is seen by a lot of people as hard and traumatizing and violent, and even seeing like the live footage that's very scary. So I mean, what are your thoughts on the role of reproducing it in a music video like this, where it's not actually happening to the people in the video itself, but still bringing back that very violent happening?
Thank you for the question. I think there's a tug. I always come back to being a teacher. Like in the past couple of weeks, there have been teens who committed suicide, and they put that on Facebook, and that was something that was on Facebook Live. And I think that now media is capturing everything, because it has to happen by the moment. It's by the minute, by the second. People want to have access to that, even if it's incredibly private. In the instance of Chosen, I appreciated that he was stepping out and going a step farther by including the footage. Anything that has been released publicly already, and I personally cannot continually watch footage of people being shot. When the panel talked about self-care, that's one thing that I had to stop doing. I know a lot of people are critical of that, but my self-care is that when I go to sleep at night, I'm not replaying images of young boys being shot, of women being shot. The one that hit me hardest was Tamir Rice, because at the time he was shot, I have a nephew who's my height, has been my height for a couple of years. He's 14 now, but he was 12. So that was especially hard for me. So artistically, I think that it's at the artist's discretion. If you include it, that doesn't mean that I'm going to listen to it, because my self-care, my preservation, my joy, my happiness, my spirit can't be fed by constantly seeing images of people being killed, because it seems to be like a repetitive stream. So to take a short excerpt of a court case, like I presented on Chosen's work that he's done on the Ferguson incident with Michael Brown, and I had court, not footage, but I had court transcripts that I included. That's one thing. But I know that I had to stop looking at the pictures of Michael Brown, because that alone, I don't know what the footage was, but the fact that that young man, because everybody has called him boy, the fact that that young man laid in the street the amount of time that he did is so troubling to me that I can't handle it. And then coincidentally, I was married on that same day. So that's my wedding day. So every year, I got married on that day in 2014, and I got married in Liberia in West Africa. So my husband and I were watching CNN, and I was like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. And then to sit down and realize that that's what your CNN news feed is showing. The protests, the tanks, the guns. So for me, I think, like I said, that it has to be at the artist's discretion how they're going to incorporate that and weave it in. But it can really start to chip away at who you are as a person if you're continually exposed to that. Thank you.
Hi, so I know you mentioned that there were some halos that were brought up in the video. I don't think we saw them. But I was wondering if you saw some kind of parallel, and maybe Shozan saw some kind of parallel between like the hoodies and the halos, especially with like references to God and just like darkness, and like how like insane it is that it seems like he's apologizing for wearing a hoodie.
Shozan did not speak about the connection between the halos and the hoodies, and the halos weren't physical halos, but in that picture, the way it's painted, there was the angel, and then behind them, there's the circle of light, and that's what I was referring to. It does seem that hoodies have been things that we start to apologize for more and more. I try not to harass my students about it at school, because I greet students in the morning, and one of the first things I say is, good morning. Oh, by the way, can you take your hoodie off for us? And then I have to check myself, because studies have discussed the ways that hoodies offer some sense of reassurance, protection, covering for students, even when they aren't inside. Beyond it might be chilly, but it's just something that's soothing. So, yes. But no, Chosen has not spoken about that to me. That's a question I'll definitely raise. Thank you for that.
Thank you.